Justice Alito and Mr. Baxter had an interesting discussion about age appropriateness.
What are the ages of the children who were involved here?
These books were approved for pre-K, which in Montgomery County can start as early as 3 if they're going to turn 4 that fall.
And it goes up to what?
The books that we've all talked about go through grade 6.
All right, so you're talking about children maybe in the age of 5 to 11 or 4 to 11. Now, would you agree that at a certain age, students are capable of understanding this point, which probably is not a point that can be understood by a 4 or 5-year-old, and that is that my teacher, who was generally telling me that certain things are right and that certain things are wrong, isn't necessarily going to be correct on everything. It is possible for me to disagree with him or her on certain subjects. Would you agree that there comes a point when a student is able to make that distinction?
That's right, and many of our clients' objections would be diminished as their children got older. But here we're in a situation where Montgomery County's own principals objected that these books were inappropriate for the age, that they were dismissive of religion and shaming toward children who disagree. The board itself withdrew 2 of the books for what it said were content concerns because it finally agreed that what parents and its own principals were saying was accurate.
Most of us would agree that there are topics that are not appropriate for children as young as 3 or 4 years of age. But who determines what those are? More importantly, how granular is that decision? Because while we are dealing with classrooms of children, each and every one of them mature at different rates. If it's appropriate for 50% of the class, is that good enough? Should the teacher be the one determining what is appropriate for a child of a certain age? Should the board? And what about the 50% of students who are not prepared to deal with a certain subject? Should they be harmed because the board wants this education promoted? Speaking of this education, why is the Board of Education working so hard to force children to learn about these subjects?
Yeah, and one final factor that may distinguish this particular case from some of the others that you have been asked to express a view about, and you did touch on this, is the fact that it concerns sex and gender, and that the Maryland legislature itself has recognized these subjects raise special concerns and has provided for an opt-out from the health classes where these matters are discussed.
That's right. And currently in Montgomery County, you can opt out from the very same instruction during health class, but then you're required to stay during story time.
Isn't that interesting? You can opt out of instruction during health class, but when the same subject comes up in story time, the board says no. Mr. Baxter pointed out an interesting incongruity in the board's argument.
And then also a question about when sex ed starts. The boards and the state's mandated regulation is in the record. It's at pages 62 through 83 of the joint appendix. There you start in pre-K with instruction that parents or families can come in all different forms with all different kinds of parents, different kinds of gender identities and expressions. The same things that are being taught through these school books, you can opt out when it comes up during health class, but not during story time, in which there's no instruction about how to use these books to develop characters, narrative arc, or anything else that you would expect in an English class.
The question of age appropriateness of starting sex ed in pre-K is one thing. Hiding it in so-called English curriculum is something completely different.